Welcome to the AUSA Coffee Series, featuring the Deputy Chief of Staff for the G-9, Lieutenant General Kevin Vereen, and Senior Enlisted Leader G-9, Sergeant Major Michael Perry. My name is Alex Brody. I am the Director of Meetings here at AUSA, and we have a great group with us. Get your questions ready. I'll be walking around towards the back end of this event with the microphone. I'll be looking for anyone who wants to raise their hand with questions. So start thinking about your questions now. We, of course, want to thank our sponsors today. Our 4-star sponsors are Leonardo DRS, General Dynamics, and our 2-star sponsor is Northrop Grumman. Please give our sponsors a big round of applause. We, of course, can't do these events without our sponsors. So if you're interested in being a sponsor in the future, please stop by our registration desk, ask for Emily Call. She is our sponsorship manager. She'll be happy to go over all of the great benefits to being a sponsor at AUSA. We do appreciate the presence of general officers and command sergeants major joining us this morning as well. It's always great to have you. And I'd also like to acknowledge congressional staff that are here with us today. Your efforts on behalf of the Army, soldiers, and families is greatly appreciated. With that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Vice President for Leadership and Education of the Association of the United States Army. Please help me give General Les Smith a warm welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Come on, you can do better than that. We just fed you some breakfast. Good morning and welcome. We're excited to just hear from our wonderful speakers this morning. Our first speaker, my good friend, General Kevin Vereen, is the Deputy Chief of Staff, G-9. The DCS G-9 leads integration across the Army enterprise to modernize installations, enhance quality of life, and develop and implement policies, plans, and programs that enable the Army to recruit, train, deploy, fight, and win. He's the primary advisor to Army senior leadership on military installation services, infrastructure, investment requirements, and environmental management and stewardship. Also oversees and advises on funding, both appropriated and non-appropriated, for morale, welfare, and recreation program execution. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Our second speaker, Sergeant Major Michael Perry, is his right-hand man and is a senior enlisted leader to the G-9. He advocates for the quality of life of soldiers and their families, visiting Army installations across the enterprise, and engaging the force to hear their concerns, share what Army leadership is talking about to improve their quality of life, and bring them to the critical and crucial feedback of those soldiers and their families. As they come to the stage, please join me in welcoming General Vereen and Michael Perry. I just gotta tell you guys, these they look like really nice guys, but on the golf course, they take all your money. Especially the Sergeant Major over there. They talk so much junk, that's another story, man. So they didn't know I was gonna say that.
I didn't know.
Yeah. So this infrastructure discussion is a big deal. So what I asked them, the first ask you to open up with is, you know, we've had this split between the G-9 and IMCOM. Can you tell our listeners what that looks like and how did we split and who's responsible for what?
Okay. So first of all, hey, thanks for allowing me to come today. And, you know, I do want to give a shout out to the warrants. There's some warrant officers out here, but they never acknowledged them. So warrant officers, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
You know, appreciate it. Yes, you're very technical. Can't do it without you. So a great question. I'll just first start with, I don't know how the AUSA did it, to be honest with you. When I look at what we do here in the G9 in headquarters DA and our collaboration with IMCOM, I just don't know how one person did both. It's amazing to see the amount of responsibilities and requirements. And so I think a couple of years ago, as you all know, really I'm the second one to assume the job as a G9. The AUSA had both responsibilities, both down at the installation level, and then, of course, trying to work programming and planning in the Pentagon and leverage funding for all the things that involved our installations and those things that involve taking care of our soldiers and their families. And so now my responsibility, I just want to separate it. Headquarters DA, I am the conduit between General Jones, who is the IMCOM commander, who really has the operations on the ground. He's the guy that's directly responsible for our installations, and he's responsible for the interaction with garrison commanders. So that's his responsibility. So he's there seeing things happen on the ground. He's actually trying to help resource them, provide guidance and oversight. But the garrison commanders are absolutely executing. And then my responsibility to IMCOM commander is to provide the opportunities for funding. And so the needs and requirements that are sent up from the IMCOM commander come into our office. And I'm really looking at based on all the priorities, we got to balance because we just have limited amount of funding and there's but so much you can do in a year. Then I'm balancing what he's wanting, balancing them against other requirements across the Army and trying to satisfy his needs. And so that's the collaboration that he and I do almost weekly. We have weekly interactions, but I'm really looking at his request for things that he wants to get done at the installation level, and I'm fighting for funding at the Army level and of course on the Hill for him to make those requirements and those desires come true. So I handle the planning, the programming and funding, but he's actually executing operations on the ground with the support of garrison commanders.
Okay, that's good, thanks. So for you and the Sergeant Major, so we have this thing called the Quality of Life Task Force. But if you could you describe why we stood up the Quality of Life Task Force, what caused it to happen, and go from there? Okay, Sergeant Major.
Yes, sir. So a few years ago, we look at the quality of life umbrella. That's a really big umbrella. There's a lot of things that could be placed under that. You look at some of the housing challenges that we've had across the Army. Unfortunately, the suicides that were up, especially in Alaska. And then when you look at some of our what we call them remote and isolated installations, they're in more austere locations. They don't have all the infrastructure outside the gate. And so this was an opportunity to, instead of looking at one installation or one problem, to look at it more holistically, bring all the right personnel, the expertise into the building, and to create a forum that, those personnel would address and tackle issues on behalf of some of those commanders and sergeant majors and families out there. But they had that direct conduit to, Army senior leaders. Right. And then our role in that is the G-9 was very significant, specifically with our Soldier Family Readiness Directorate, right, led by Ms. Geis, because a lot of her portfolio is directly impacted through that, sir.
Okay.
General Vereen.
No, you said it well. I mean, I can't say anything else beyond that.
So for you, Kevin, what are some of the things that the Quality of Life Task Force has done to improve some of the things the Sergeant Major just talked about? Give us a couple, 2, 3 things.
Yeah. So first of all, we know that one thing that our soldiers, in some cases, our younger soldiers, struggle financially, and they're it's not a good message. But we also know that the funding and their income is not necessarily at a level where they kind of compete with folks outside of the military. So there's food insecurities that that we're all experiencing with our younger soldiers. And over the last couple of years, we've been able to really leverage not only inside the Army but also externally. That's where we get a lot of our momentum is really investing in the partnerships with industry to help us overcome some of the problems that the Army just does not have the capacity to be able to solve. And so food insecurities and the programs that we're setting up to kind of help younger families be able to deal with balancing their income, trying to make ends meet, trying to satisfy the requirements of the home, and understanding that the home is critical because when our soldiers have problems, they can't focus on training. They can't focus on, doing the things that we want them to do as a soldier to support the Army at war. And then the next thing is we know that we have, family members who need special needs. And so our ability to be able to leverage and expand our EEF&P program and make it, something that's very easy for our families to be able to navigate through. All of us kind of grew up in the previous years in the Army, and our EEF&P was very antiquated. It was, if you had a family member that was EEF&P, everything was done by paper. And so you're literally trying to fill out paperwork, and then you're passing it to an organization, normally the hospital or the medical personnel, and you're hoping that that it doesn't get lost in the transitions, that hand-to-hand transitions that this packet has to go through. Well, we've been able to automate this. And so now it's a system that really, it's all done on automation. It's done through the computer system. It's very transparent, and it allows soldiers and families to see their packets through the process. So now you don't have this question of where's my packet, and man, I don't even know where it is. Nobody's responded to me. Nobody's giving me feedback. They can see it in real time as it's being transferred through the application that we have now called EEFMP. And so that's another process that we've been able to implement as well. And then I think the last thing that I do want to say is we understand that, the Army, we enlist service members, soldiers, but we retain families. And we are committed with spouse employment. I am a prime example. My wife works, and I think the average family now and the average soldier and spouse, most of them work. They either work in business or they have something that's, that they own, privately own, their own personal businesses. And so we understand that. But we also understand that they work for the government too. And so we just want to really expand the aperture so our spouses don't have to feel the pain of having to move and not knowing where their next job is going to be. And so our ability to be able to leverage and enhance spouse employment across the Army has been something that we've been able to leverage through our program.
That's good. So Sergeant Major, pulling that thread a little bit, you and I talked about critical infrastructure. Can you tell our team, our listeners here today, why the infrastructure of our installation is so critical to warfighting readiness?
Yes, sir. That's a great question. I think a lot of times when we think of infrastructure, we think of the physical buildings, headquarters, barracks, housing, some of those different things. But obviously, the infrastructure that we really have to be protecting is the water, the utilities. We've seen attacks out there in the civilian sector on some of that key infrastructure. And so when we have the ability to partner, with industry and our communities in order to create resiliency, then what that ultimately does is ensures that those installations, many of which are power projection platforms, they're going to have the ability to, project power if and when we need, whether it's to defend the homeland or it's going to be beyond. And so again, be able to, assess right now how our infrastructure looks. The CSGO command systems government's office that we stood up is critical to that, because a lot of those systems have electronic kind of component that we have to make sure is not susceptible to any kind of threat, sir.
Right. And so anything else you want to add on that?
Just one example, believe it or not, our JSID systems inside of our buildings, our companies that store our weapons, all those are tied to some sort of platform, and it's just a basic system like that. Our HVAC systems, so we're trying to do everything we can to protect those systems from being compromised and threats. And so, believe it or not, we have hundreds of thousands of systems across the Army, and it's really accounting for them. And now we're just trying to figure out how we can protect them from threats.
Yeah. So for industry, we're talking about cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about penetration testing. We're talking about all those things in addition to being able to deploy, fight, and win, that we got to make sure that we're ready to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you guys are on the road a lot, talking to soldiers, talking to families, talking to installations. Can you give us some detail about what your teams do when they go out, and what you see on those trips?
Yeah. So I'll start. First of all, I don't travel by myself. That's first rule for me. Normally my sergeant major goes with me, and usually I'm taking the subject matter expert,
right, that
handles installations. And of course, I take Ms. Geis with me as well, because she has all the family programs. And so, so my effort when I'm traveling, I really want to listen to the garrison commanders. This is their opportunity to go point to point with, somebody that's coming in to try to figure out how we can help. And I understand every garrison commander has, where you sit is where you stand. I do know that. So what's important to that garrison commander is important to that installation. And I'm trying to, muddle through, having seen, a couple of installations to figure out, okay, where do we place the priorities? So I really want to focus on barracks. Barracks and where our soldiers are living is really the primary reason I'm going normally, because as you all know, we've got we've got challenges with our barracks. We are trying to balance both MILCON, new construction, but we're also trying to renovate existing infrastructure. And so that's where we are. And of course, it's not anything that folks don't know. We're short in certain areas when you think about the capacity to be able to house all of our soldiers. And so barracks is number one. Housing is right there with barracks. We are on a full court press to solve our housing. And so our companies are the folks who help us in this process are part of RCI. And so we're doing everything we can to have quality housing for our soldiers. So housing is the second thing that I look at. And then I think the third thing that I always try to invest in is really the family soldier programs that we have. MWR centers, our CDCs are important to us. It goes back to our, if we don't have quality childcare, then trust me, our families are not happy. And everybody understands that, in this day and age, quality childcare matters. And if our families if they're unsure about, taking their young children to a safe, secure facility where they don't have to worry about, anything happening to them, that's important. And that's important to this whole thing about investing in our families so that we can keep our soldiers and keep them in the game and focused on what we want them to do.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I just say, obviously, there's nothing like getting on the ground. A lot of problems are solved in the building on behalf of our families and our soldiers, but we don't have the context of really what are some of those challenges out there. And so I think our ability really is twofold. When we go out there and we're visiting camp, station, and posts, it's to validate that the policies that we do have in effect, or the programs that we do have in effect for spousal employment, the policies that we have to govern how we're modernizing our barracks and doing restoration to ensure that they're right to achieve the effects that we want to achieve. And then it is amazing. Every time we go out, we're finding something that we need to come back to our team and say, okay, how can we do this better? Because that is not ultimately having the intended effect that we want, especially when we're talking about, the limited resources that we have in order to achieve the things that we have to within our portfolio. So that feedback, is just, it's imperative. And then it's solidified, I think, again, through the installation enterprise. When you look at the G-9 and IE&E as the two partners inside the building, when those senior leaders go out, we're seeing things and we're coming back and collaborating, but also it's AMC and IMCOM as well. And then USACE. I would add those are like the big five, in order to ensure that we're really being able to achieve some effects again out there when it comes to the installation enterprise. Sir.
Good. Let's open it up to our audience. Questions from the audience. A former garrison commander himself.
Yes. Cool. Hey, sir, T.W. Williams, Director of Army Programs at Amoresco. You talked about the relationship and how you're supporting Installation Management Command with the challenges that they have, obviously for funding and doing all the missions that they have. But now that Army Material Command, a 4-star, is in that organizational structure, how are they leveraging that 4-star to get after a lot of the things that you're just talking about? How does AMC support, and how they, just give me a little bit of where they come in and how they support your installations also. Thank you.
No, that's a great question. So, it always helps when you got a 4-star in your corner. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. As we're dealing in the headquarters DA, in the Pentagon every single day, there's truth in lending when you have, commanders out in the field. Sergeant Major kind of said it, very eloquently. It's there's truth in lending on the ground. These commanders are, they're on the, doing circulation, and they're going to installations. The AMC commander is just as busy as everybody else, and he's just trying to advocate on our behalf. But he's seeing things in true time as well. And so that interaction between AMC and IMCOM, the IMCOM commander kind of reports to the AMC commander, is valuable. Now, taking his responsibilities, or the AMC commander's responsibilities, and how to leverage it in the building, is he is an advisor on the programming and the funding for us. And so as we're trying to really sort through the priorities and figure out where we're going to leverage money and put money into into place, the AMC commander is advising both me and Honorable Jacobson on, based on experience, based on, kind of seeing things from their perspective, where the funding needs to go. And then, of course, the AMC commander controls the facilities investment plan. So he is the person that approves that. And that investment plan is based off priorities, based on what every 4-star and 3-star level command and division command is submitting. And he's prioritizing it based on, the requirements on funding and what the Army is trying to do holistically. So that's the importance of the AMC commander. But we value his or her input. Yeah.
This question here. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
General Vereen,
Yes.
Sergeant Major, thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Mark Hall. I'm with the Association of United States Army. I'd like to ask about continuing resolutions. When we, the association, AUSA, are meeting with members of Congress and staff, our number one recommendation to the Congress in support of the total Army is to please pass the National Defense Authorization Act and the appropriations on time. And 16 of the past 20 years, the DoD has been under a continuing resolution. So, sir, could you please comment on the impact that continuing resolutions have on the Army from your perspective as Army G9?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, it is not good when we have a CR. I mean, it doesn't help us because we are trying to plan, 5 years. We have a 5-year window that literally we're trying to, for infrastructure, we try to get design work done early on. I mean, the first year or so of a 5-year plan, and we want to at least, be digging or completion in that 5-year span. And so when we have a CR, everything gets delayed, everything gets stopped. I mean, our planning and design has to be at 35% before we can even take it to the Corps engineers to even start a discussion on, hey, I want this building. Where's your 35% design? And if we don't have money to be able to do that, then that's a non-starter at the beginning. The second critical piece, I think, for CRs is this idea of inflation over time. When you have a CR and it's at the beginning of the year and you're trying to get some work done and you're trying to make investments, if you're waiting till the last minute, the price goes up. And if you don't have money at the beginning of the year and you're waiting to the last quarter of the fiscal year because now you got money, well, guess what? The price just went up. And so, literally 35, 40% increase when you could have had it, cheaper on the front end if you'd have had money to be able to use. And so we are dealing with that constantly. Our cost of inflation over time has just grown insurmountable. And you look at it, and a lot of it is tied to CR because we just can't get it done. We can't get the money early enough to be able to have a very feasible, economical investment on the front end. So hopefully I kind of frame the impacts of a CR. It will bankrupt you if you are living off dollars to try to make ends meet. So it's not good for our military.
Sir, good morning. George Nicholson. I'm the Washington liaison for the Global Special Operations Forces Foundation. One of our highest priorities, working with the Soft Caucus on Capitol Hill, was the problems we were having in Florida. You're probably familiar with the 7th Special Forces Group down there. And when the original BRAC decision was made, they said, well, you can use the center down on Egland, Maine. Anybody that's been down there and sees how long it gets to drive down there. But that went on for years and years. And finally, it took the Soft Caucus and congressional support to push that forward. Mm-hmm. Can you comment on that? And also, is that increasingly a problem for other military bases with the problem of having child support facilities?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. So I'm very familiar with CBS. That's Camp Bull Simons is where you're talking about in Florida. So this, we are, thank goodness, we had NDA. The NDA authorized us to be able to start design work for that facility there. There's a caveat to everything. It's now we're going through the discussions with the Air Force because there's some safety concerns on Camp Bull Simons and where this CDC is supposed to go. But we are the Army, and I can speak on behalf of Honorable Jacobs because he's been working it. We're fully committed to having this CDC for the 7th Special Forces. As you know, there's quite a distance between Crestview and where they have to travel to get to Egland, and then they have to come back. And so it's not feasible with the planning that they have currently in place. So we put a program manager down there, and they've been on ground for about 90 days, which shows our commitment. And this program manager is really I think it's a lady. She's the interface between our ability to be able to look at other CDC options interim until we can get that CDC built. And so we made a commitment both financially. We've got the design work, the money to be able to do that. And so we're gonna commit to building this. Now we've got to work through some security things with some safety things with the Air Force. So we're in the middle of trying to figure this one out. But I can assure, I can almost guarantee that we'll have a CDC at Camp Bull Simons, and it'll be the Army CDC. The second part of your question is, are we seeing impacts across the Army with regards to CDCs? And first of all, we don't have a shortage of CDCs in the Army. We've got enough infrastructure. Now, some of our infrastructure needs some repair. And so we're working through, the remod and things of that nature that we have to get them, in a really good state of condition. Our number one issue when it comes to CDC is employment. We can't hire enough CDC workers. And so we have a lot of initiatives going on with regards to how do we grow our CDC employment. And so our installations are going after it, trying to incentivize, our workers, those who want to work in CDC, who have a desire to do this, and try to make it an enterprise, so that literally once we get them in, we give them, opportunities to be able to develop career-wise, and through schooling, through certifications, licensure, and then have it transferable from one installation to the other. Because most of our CDC workers, they're spouses. They're spouses of military. So now they'll have seamless employment opportunities as they transition from one post to the other. So that's the piece with CDCs. It's not the infrastructure. We have enough infrastructure, but we are right now we're challenged with creating the capacity for our employees to be able to now man our CDCs. Yes.
Sir, Sergeant Major Ted Adair, I'm a director with Guidehouse. My question is about microgrids. The Army has an aggressive goal to install microgrids at every Army installation. Wondered if you could offer some observations, insights into where you are in the planning and execution for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's you.
That's me. Okay. All right.
Stay away
Yeah,
from
so-
microgrids, sir. Sorry.
Yeah. So we're experimenting with microgrids. We understand the importance as we look into, look at, how do we make our installations more energy efficient, but also how do we secure and protect our installations? The old systems, we have now we're tied to the electrical grid. Yeah. And as you all know, I mean, you've seen things over the last couple of months and, the last year about attacks to our electrical grid systems. Primarily, hey, I'm from Fort Bragg. I mean, that's my home. I'm born there. And so, we recently had, of course, the attack to, the grid system, power grid system there outside of Bragg, and it could literally take a city to its knees. And so when you look at the microgrids and what it offers for us when it comes to, energy and power and efficiency, it is something that we're moving toward. And I think the Army's on a fast pace to get there. We have roughly 20 or so, I think, microgrids now that are up, and we're planning. Our long-term plan is to have microgrids on every one of our installations. That's the long-term plan. And when you think about all the other things that we try to do, we're doing black start exercises where we literally shut down power, and we want to have the ability to be able to do this and be able to still be able to deploy, mobilize, alert, deploy our units, from our force projection platforms, all our major installations, and be able to still, get after our mission. So there's value in this. And so the long-term plan is to have microgrids on every one of our installations.
Thank you, General and Sergeant Major, for your good thought about how Army G-9 is serving our soldiers. I'm Charles Rong from U.S. Army Research Lab. Following this gentleman's question regarding the microgrid, I wonder how would you place your priorities in the next 10 to 20 years regarding moving Army climate strategy? Related to the, I guess a part of it will be renewable energy for Army installations.
Okay, that's a great question. We, of course, about about 8 months, 9 months ago, we finally approved our Army climate strategy. And so we're working through a lot of that now. It's really a holistic look at, our climate. We are trying to focus on resilient installations that not only can withstand kinetic, non-kinetic intrusions, but also resilient when it comes to being able to withstand the environment and the impacts on the environment with global warming and things of that nature. So I think the one significant thing that we're doing right now across the Army is we're really experimenting with infrastructure that gives us a whole different ability when it comes to the environment and understanding that the changing of climate. So one example, we have 2 different buildings that we're building in 2 different areas across the United States. We're building a barracks at JBLM that's made out of this special timber that's produced out on the West Coast, which will give us some sort of the ability when it comes to climate control and withstanding the elements and enduring the climate that's specifically out there on the West Coast. It's totally different than it is on the East.
Yeah.
And so that facility is going to be a prototype. So it's going to be a building, but it's going to give us a lot of data and analytical data to see, hey, this is what we need to start building on the West Coast to be able to now give us longevity. Most of our barracks and our facilities are 50 years. 50 years is the maximum amount of time we can get out of a building normally. But this may give us an opportunity to withstand the elements, the environment that the West Coast produces, to give us a little bit longevity than 50 years. And so that's going to be something that's going to give us a lot of data. And then on the East Coast, we're building another barracks it's at Bragg, if I'm not mistaken. And it is built out a whole different set of materials, but it's built based on what the Southeast, when we look at climate and look at all the impacts of climate on the Southeast. So these 2 facilities are going to give us great data to kind of chart the way for us in the future. So now we know that we have to change our infrastructure. And if we want our infrastructure to last longer than 50 years, these are going to be 2 prototypes that I think that'll get us there. And then everything else that goes with climate to include, how do we power our buildings? How do we talk about microgrids? We're looking at, vehicles. We're going into the, believe it or not, we're going into the electric vehicle arena, both non-tactical and tactical vehicles that we're looking at. And by 2050, our plan is to be fully electric when it comes to our vehicle fleet. And so there's a way to get there. We got to get hybrid first. We're going, a hybrid mixture by 2035, and then by 2050, we're going to be. The plan is to be fully electric when it comes to our vehicle fleet, both non-tactical and tactical vehicles. So, yeah,
It's good.
General Vereen, Sergeant Major, Connor Crehan, Unite Us, Army veteran. Taking it back to the conversation about soldier readiness and the problems that might ultimately impact a soldier's readiness. In my experience, and I'll use your example of food insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a problem. There are other problems that soldiers might not want to bring to their chain of command to get help with. So what programs or initiatives are there in place to help with such problems as food insecurity that our soldiers and their families are experiencing? Thank you.
Yes, sir. So first of all, sir, thank you for your service. With regards to one thing we're trying to do is take a proactive approach. Prevention is very, very important. Right now, our senior leaders understand the value of getting upstream, right? We're very good at reacting. We have a lot of programs that are tied to reacting to a problem, but what we're trying to do is get upstream. So one of those things that we've done, NDAA 2016 told all the services they had to develop financial literacy training for the services, common military training. And so the G-9 is the lead proponent for that for the Army. In October of 2021, we unveiled, our system, which is 10 different milestones that soldiers will hit at different points in their career: PCSing, birth of a first child, marriage, investing in TSP, to name a few. And so that in itself can help by providing education on finances specifically. And it really starts at when they're going through, basic combat training for our officers at OSIT. And then it's a continuum throughout the entire PME for our officers and NCOs. And so that is very, very important from a prevention perspective. And, I'm working very closely with the senior enlisted leaders across all 3 compos to help ensure that we make this a priority, because it's outstanding training. Financialfrontline.org is the website that we've established. And there's just a wealth of resources for our soldiers and our families when it comes to that. Obviously, when you mentioned programs, AER has been a phenomenal partner of the Army for decades. And so we work very closely with AER. Obviously, we've got the drive going on right now. And along the lines of, not only does AER do phenomenal things, and they continue to adapt the way that they give and help meet the needs of our soldiers. We saw some unique things for soldiers and families during COVID that we hadn't really experienced before, and AER figured out a way in order to support their needs. But also we partner with AER, going back to this financial literacy training, where if you have an AER loan and you go and knock out this financial literacy training that AER has put together, it's about 25 videos in 3 different areas. If you're E4 and below, $500 off of your AER loan. And if you're an E5 and above, it's $250 off. So those are just a couple of examples of what we're trying to do as an Army and how we're partnering with other agencies.
Yeah, and I think in addition to AER, I think PenFed, AUSA, and so many other organizations have helped to participate, because we know it takes a team effort to do
Yes,
that.
sir.
Yeah. So real quick, I just want to kind of add to what Sergeant Major
Yeah.
said. Just think of this conceptually. What the Army's trying to do is really create these communities of health, these installations, healthy installations. That's what we want to do, and we want to have so many opportunities and resources that our families and our soldiers are their time is spent thinking about good things and being engraced and being just involved in great things that the installation and the surrounding community can provide for them. And so, and that we do know that there is a reciprocal effect to if we have healthy installations, that we can ward off some of these behaviors that we are seeing across our Army, and afford the opportunities for our families and our soldiers to thrive within the confines of a healthy installation. And so that's why we talk about CDCs, we talk about MWR, we talk about our dining facilities and our restaurants that we have on our installations, the use of AFEs and then we talk about the external support that they have with food insecurity and and AER and having the resources to be able to to help deal with problems that they may encounter, to include, hey, I'm a law enforcement guy, having healthy and safe law enforcement response and and emergency response on the installation to help them when they have crisis and things of that nature. So all this comes into play when we talk about healthy communities, a great hospital. That's what we want to create. But it's going to take not only the Army, but it's going to take industry to help us with that. And so that's the important, I think, sort of concept. If I could put it in a sort of like a framework for you, that's what the Army's trying to move to. And if we can get there, trust me, I think we will have our Army will be in a great condition to be able to not only be the best Army in the world that we currently are, but even being better than we are today.
Right. So talking about different challenges and opportunities, can you talk about what the installation enterprise is doing in supporting the recruiting mission?
Yes. So everyone knows we're having a major crisis in recruiting, and it's not only the Army; it's all the services, and this is across the U.S. and so we're not in it alone. I mean, a lot of you all are have businesses. You probably are invested in businesses. We all understand that, but you're probably experiencing it too. Trying to hire folks to work. It's work has changed into something a little bit different than when we the last couple of years. And so what our Army and what our installations are doing is we're opening up opportunities for young men and women to understand what the Army is all about. Okay. And so this Meet Your Army, that's what it was when I was at USAREC. But it is expanded to to really, no kidding, it's the total Army. So we're bringing young men and women on Army installations. And for all the right reasons, over the past decades, we became a closed off society. I mean, the Army and most of our installations for security reasons. And so people they didn't really venture onto our installations unless you had the need to be there. But we want to invest in America. And the way that we're doing it is we're opening our installations up for young men and women to understand and see what's actually on our installations, so we can put away some of the myths of Army, what the Army is all about. And it's amazing when they come and they see that, man, you got a place where you can shop, you got gyms where you can work out, you got places where you eat, we even got places where you live. By the way, we got pets running around the installation. Believe it or not, there's some folks that don't even think we can have animals. We can have pets. And so, but it's really informing them and exposing them to what the Army is all about. And then hopefully we can inform them enough where now they get a whole different perception of what the Army is all about. And to know that you can do anything that you want. You can be all you can be, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
In the Army. And so that's what we want them to do. We want them to be all that they can be. But the only way they can be all they can be is know what the Army's all about.
Right.
And so, and I was just talking to General Brown earlier. We were talking about our kids and, this is a great family business. But that's not what we want. We want this to be America's business.
Yeah.
I have 2 kids that have had, one's currently serving, one just got out. So it is a family business, but that's not what the Army, that's not going to help us be successful in the long run. We've got to invest in America. And so that's why it's important that we continue to inform young men and women about what the Army is all about. And all of you all are recruiters, every single one of them. And so if you don't think you are, you are. If you've served in the Army and you've been in the military, then you can be able to help, inform and open up some opportunities for young men and women.
Great.
General Smith, if
Yes,
I could
please, go
on
ahead.
that. Yes, sir. So, General Vereen gave some great examples about directly what we're doing. Indirectly, this is why it's so important that, we do have quality and safe housing. We do have quality barracks, that we do show the emphasis that we place on taking care of our soldiers and families, because, there is a war for talent. And so, one of the questions asked earlier about the importance or the effect of a continuing resolution, when we can't modernize, when we can't continue to put resources towards improving the quality of life on our installations, then it actually does have an indirect effect on our ability to recruit that talent to make a decision to not only join the military service, which we're thankful for, but to join the Army specifically.
Yeah, that's good. Before I ask my last question, any questions from the audience? Any addition? This one here. Yes.
One. Thank you both for being here. Sean Keeley, Palace Advisors. I was wondering if you could address the issue of mold infestation in the Army barracks. There have been lots of stories in the past year, soldiers being uprooted from barracks because of that, the health hazards associated with it. What kind of funding resources are associated with addressing that issue within G9? Thanks.
Yes, that's a great question. So the Army's on a full court press to resolve this mold issue. And between IMCOM with oversight from AMC, and of course, in the Army G9 with the funding to make sure that they're resourced, we are on a fast pace to resolve mold. Now, granted, the thing that we want to ensure is that none of our soldiers should live in conditions where we have mold. It's not from a safety standpoint, health standpoint. It's just not something that we want to our soldiers to be around. But we understand that mold is a part of life. I mean, if certain climates, certain environments and certain climates produce mold, what we're trying to do is mitigate mold both in our barracks and also in our housing. And so we are on a 100% inspection of all of our facilities, especially where our soldiers live. That's our barracks, and of course our families live in our housing. We are on 100% mold inspections across all of this. Now, our RCI partners are leading the housing portion, and we've been able to successfully do 2 areas. I think we did Meade, Belvoir is one, and then right now we're doing Fort Gordon, Georgia. And so that's going to give us a great assessment. And when we see mold that's at a certain level, because we have, we've got our engineers in there, we've got the health folks that come and assess, what type of mold it is. We have to remove folks from those environments, those facilities, and hence we've moved a whole barracks full of soldiers out into the economy. Fort Bragg, we did that, and so we're more than willing to do that. It's an investment, we understand that, but it's all for the right reasons. And then the same thing with our family members when they're in housing, where it presents mold, and we're getting in, and now we're gonna mitigate it, the mold piece. And so it comes with money. We've invested dollars to ensure that we have the oversight, because previously we didn't have the oversight at the installations to be able to, to validate when it comes to quality control and quality assurance. We were saying, oh yeah, well the mold was, we mitigated the mold, but we didn't have somebody going in to check. So now we have measures in place where we've been able to build offices that now have people in them to be able to go back and now take a look and assess the mold. So our major was at Fort Bragg, and I'm gonna let him talk briefly about the new sort of capability that we've seen come up on the horizon. We hope this will be a great piece of technology that'll help us in the future. So
Thank you, sir. So it was actually just a little further south than that. It was at Fort Stewart, Georgia, a few weeks ago. And Third ID is a part of 18th Airborne Corps, which is really leading innovation for the Army. Each division has been tagged with kind of developing an innovation lab. And so they have the Marne Innovation Lab down there. And so it was a two-pronged attack really on mold in the barracks. First of all, again, our soldiers come in with just amazing talent long before they come in, especially if, they're a little bit older, they've got some education. So they had a young soldier that developed an app. It's called MCAT, Mold Conditions Awareness Tool. And it's an app that ultimately, with the use of very cost-effective sensors and partnering with Georgia Tech University, they were able to develop very cost-effectively a tool that ultimately, when you put those sensors in there, and it's optimal for when units have to deploy or units have to go to JRTC, NTC, and they're gone for longer periods of time, you don't have anybody in those barracks. This tool literally at a leader's hand be able to tell you what the conditions are. And when it starts to get into that amber, then a team is able to go in and do some mitigation to ensure that it never becomes a challenge. And so that's what we're trying to do, as we go out and visit these amazing best practices that we'll see at Camp Station Post X. We're bringing that back and then using our access and placement to go ahead and disseminate those ideas across the Army. And then tied to that also a Staff Sergeant Arcovio from 1st Brigade Combat Team. I got to give him a shout out. So this young man just took really the initiative to take a very proactive approach to developing a mold mitigation team in order to ensure that the soldiers understand. I mean, he created a QR code where soldiers in their barracks can scan that code, and it gives them the ability to go, and it's tied directly to the DPW and to this team, this innovation or this inspection team, to be able to go out and they've come up with some solutions, literally that they were able to, purchase on Amazon in order to, ultimately have the right chemicals to get after the problem instead of it just being traditionally bleach. And so those are just a couple examples of innovative ideas that are happening right now that we want to make sure that we get across the Army.
And it's soldiers doing this.
Yes,
These are soldiers coming up with these concepts. Very, very, it's amazing the amount of, just savvy that our soldiers have. They can come up with anything. You just give them a little bit of time and maybe give them a little bit of resources, and they'll go and they'll make it happen. So these are soldiers that did this for us.
That's good. That's very good. So final question. PCS season is right around the corner. And we, many people know, and we've been through all of this about moving from post camps and stations. So what improvements have we made in this process?
Okay. Yes, sir. So obviously the G4 is the lead, agent in the proponent in the building. But again, it's very closely working together with us. What we would encourage our soldiers to do is to, again, leverage technology. And so I think it's the My Move app, right? Where when soldiers are in that window and they're getting ready to PCS, Digital Garrison app is another great app, right? This technology, which a lot of our younger generation, loves to utilize, it gives soldiers access to information, resources about not only the installation, but the surrounding community. We know when a soldier and their family, if they've got young children, if they're not going to live on the installation, one of the most significant things is, what kind of schools are there, right? And so being able to partner again with IMCOM and AMC and the G4 to help leverage the technology to give soldiers and their spouses access to, what kind of facilities and resources am I going to have at that installation is very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah, no, like I said, we want to make, we all know that transitions and PCS times are they can be interesting in a family household, especially very stressful.
Yeah.
We all understand that. So what we want to do is we're just trying to make it less stress for our families. We've all PCS before, and we understand that this is a very stressful time, especially when you have kids and children that you're trying to figure out, okay, what schools they're going to go to, like the Sergeant Major said. But we're doing everything we can now to try to ease the stress. And one of the things I talked about was, the EEF&P program and how we kind of, streamline that, but other things that we can make, information readily accessible. So they don't have to go and find it. They can pull it up on their applications, and it makes life so much more easier. And the dialogue that they can have with folks who are currently already there, and they can share experiences and kind of inform them before they even get there.
That's good. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause for our guest today. Now, before you go, I want to inform you of a few upcoming events. Our AUSA Family Readiness Team, led by Holly Daly up here in the front, will host our 6th annual Operation Deploy Your Dress. It's a pop-up event that we're going to have here in DC at the AUSA headquarters on 7 May. So if you're looking for a dress or a suit, you need to come down. We're also excited to head to Honolulu. Yeah, I know, somebody's got to go. For the Land Pack Symposium, 16 to 18 May. So we expect to see you there. And then finally, be sure to join us in General Vereen's home in the center of the universe, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, this summer for our 2nd ever Warfighter Summit and Exposition, 26 and 27 July. For more information about these events or to register, please join us at our website at ausa.org. Finally, I want to thank all of you who support us with your membership. Membership really matters. Thank you for helping us to support the Army. Thank you for attending again, and have a great Army Day. Hooah.
Thank you.